The red dust of Mars swirled outside the massive biodome that housed Green Section 7 of the New Hope colony. Inside, surrounded by carefully tended earth plants and trees, 8-year-old Tom Miller ran his fingers through the soil of the vegetable garden. He loved the feeling of real dirt under his fingernails, so different from the sterile red powder that covered everything outside the dome. "Look, Mom, the tomatoes are getting bigger," Tom called out to his mother, who worked at a nearby monitoring station. She looked up from her tablet and smiled, her eyes crinkling behind her glasses. The garden was Tom's favorite place in the whole colony. Here, among the green things that reminded everyone of Earth, he could pretend he wasn't living on another planet. The artificial lighting in the dome created a perfect imitation of Earth's summer sunshine. Tom had never seen real sunlight on Earth. He was a Mars-born child, but his parents had shown him many videos. They told him stories about rain, oceans, and open skies that didn't need to be contained within protective barriers. That's when the first shadow passed overhead. At first, Tom thought it was just another supply ship from Earth. They came every month, bringing new colonists and resources. But this shadow was different. Darker, larger, and moved in a way that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The emergency sirens started blaring seconds later. "Tom," his mother's voice cut through the noise. "Come here now." He stood up, dropping his small gardening tools, but before he could run to her, the dome's surface began to ripple like water. Strange lights danced across it, purple and green, beautiful but terrifying. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Then came the sound, a high-pitched whine that made Tom's teeth hurt and his vision blur. Above, through the transparent panels of the dome, he could see them clearly now. 3 ships, unlike anything humanity had built. They were organic-looking, with surfaces that shifted and moved like liquid metal, their hulls decorated with patterns that seemed to pulse with inner light. Warning: dome integrity compromised. Warning: unknown radiation detected. All colonists proceed to emergency shelters immediately. The colony's eye announcement system spoke in its calm, measured voice, but Tom could barely hear it over the growing whine. His mother was running toward him now, her face pale with fear, but she was too far away. The garden section was large, designed to feed hundreds of colonists, and Tom had wandered to its furthest corner. The dome's surface began to crack. It wasn't supposed to be possible. The dome was built to withstand meteor impacts and the worst dust storms Mars could throw at it. But whatever energy the alien ships were emitting, it was doing something to the material itself, making it brittle. Tom tried to run toward his mother, but his legs felt heavy. The air was getting thick, hard to breathe. He saw other colonists running for the sealed emergency shelters built into the dome's walls. His father had just entered the garden section from the research lab, his white coat flapping as he sprinted toward Tom. The crack in the dome spread like spider webs, and with it came tendrils of sickly purple energy that reached down into the garden. Where they touched, plants withered instantly. Tom felt one of these tendrils brush against his arm, and pain unlike anything he'd ever known shot through his body. He screamed, but no sound came out. His lungs weren't working right. The world spun around him as he fell to his knees. Through blurring vision, Tom saw his parents finally reach him. His father's strong arms scooped him up, and they were running toward the nearest shelter. The last thing Tom saw before losing consciousness was one of the alien ships positioning itself directly over the dome, its surface rippling with what almost looked like amusement. In orbit above Mars, the highborn observers made notes about the effects of their radiation weapon on human physiology. To them, this was merely a field test, data collection on a species they considered primitive. They had no way of knowing that in hurting one human child, they had just awakened something that their own ancestors had feared, and with good reason. The United Nations Security Council chamber in New York was dead silent. On the massive screen before them, the video from Mars played again. Alien ships appearing from nowhere, the dome cracking, and a small boy falling as purple energy touched him. The timestamp showed this had happened just 6 hours ago. General Mike Stone gripped the edges of his seat until his knuckles turned white. In 30 years of military service, he had never felt so helpless. The room was filled with the most powerful people on Earth, and none of them could do anything about ships that could cross the distance between Mars and Earth in minutes. "The boy's condition?" asked the Secretary General, her voice tight with concern. A doctor appeared on a separate screen. "Tom Miller is stable but critical. The alien radiation has affected his cellular structure in ways we don't fully understand. We've placed him in a medical pod, but—" The doctor paused, struggling to maintain his professional composure. "We need help beyond our current medical knowledge." The Chinese representative stood up. "We all know what's in the vault. It's time." The room erupted in whispers. The vault wasn't supposed to exist. It was the world's best-kept secret, hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean. Only 12 people in the room knew what it really contained. General Stone's secure phone buzzed. The message was simple: "The boy's father knows." He cleared his throat. "Dr. James Miller isn't just Tom's father. 20 years ago, he was part of the team that studied the Juggernauts. He's one of 3 people alive who might understand how they work." The Secretary General's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Yes," Stone said. "Before he took a teaching position and moved his family to Mars, Dr. Miller was our lead scientist on Project Legacy." Screens around the room lit up with new alerts. The alien ships had been spotted again, this time near Jupiter's moons. They were taking readings, testing responses, like scientists studying insects. "If we activate the Juggernauts," the Russian representative said slowly, "there's no going back. The world will know what we've been hiding. Every nation will want access." General Stone stood up. "With all due respect, we don't have a choice. Look at what they did to that dome. That was a test. They're studying us, learning our weaknesses. Next time, they might test something worse." The Secretary General pressed a button, and a new image appeared on the main screen. It showed an underwater facility larger than 10 aircraft carriers. Inside, barely visible in the darkness, stood 5 enormous humanoid shapes. "The Juggernauts were sealed away for a reason," she said. "Our ancestors left us warnings. They said we weren't ready for their power." "Our ancestors didn't watch alien ships torture a child," General Stone replied. His phone buzzed again. "Dr. Miller is requesting permission to enter the vault. He says he can have Atlas operational in less than 48 hours. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew about Atlas, the first and most powerful of the Juggernauts. Even powered down, its systems gave off enough energy to power a small city. The Secretary General looked around the room. "We need a vote. The activation of Project Legacy requires unanimous consent from all permanent Security Council members." One by one, the representatives pressed buttons on their desks. Green lights appeared on the main screen. "It's done," the Secretary General said quietly. "God help us all." She turned to General Stone. "Contact Dr. Miller. Tell him to wake them up. But make sure he understands. If we do this, if we show the galaxy what humanity has been hiding, everything changes. There's no more pretending we're just another developing civilization." As the meeting ended, alerts came in from deep space monitoring stations. The alien ships were coming back. This time, they were bringing friends. They had no idea they were about to meet humanity's oldest guardians. Dr. James Miller stood before Atlas, his hand touching the cold metal of its massive foot. Even powered down, the ancient war machine towered 300 feet high in the underwater chamber. Its dark gray armor seemed to drink in the light from the facility's powerful floodlamps. "I never thought I'd see you again, old friend," he whispered. Behind him, technicians rushed back and forth, preparing power systems that hadn't been used in centuries. The vault hummed with energy as generators spun up to full power for the first time in 200 years. "Dr. Miller," a voice called out. He turned to see Captain Jane West approaching. She was to be Atlas's pilot, chosen from thousands of candidates for her exceptional mental strength. Are you sure about this? The neural link system. The records say it can break a person's mind. James nodded slowly. That's why most of them were shut down. The human brain isn't meant to control something this powerful. It's like trying to direct an ocean with your thoughts. He looked up at Atlas's face, a smooth metal mask with glowing blue lines running across it. But we don't have a choice. My son. He couldn't finish the sentence. The image of Tom lying in the medical pod, his small body fighting against the alien radiation, filled his mind. All personnel, clear the main chamber, the facility's AI announced. Activation sequence beginning in 10 minutes. James led Captain West to the neural connection chamber, a small room built into Atlas's chest. Inside, a single pilot's seat waited, surrounded by curved screens and strange devices that looked more like art than technology. Remember, he said as he helped her into the seat, Atlas isn't just a machine. The neural link means it becomes part of you. Don't fight it. Let it in, like you're learning to swim. Fight it, and you'll drown. Jane nodded, her face pale but determined. What about the weapons systems? The combat protocols? They'll come naturally once the link is established. Our ancestors built these machines to be extensions of human will. Atlas will know what you know, feel what you feel. He paused. Just be careful with the plasma cannons. They can cut through small moons. The chamber sealed with a soft hiss. James hurried to the control room, where General Stone waited with a team of scientists. On their screens, they could see inside the neural chamber where Jane sat, her eyes closed in concentration. Beginning power-up sequence, James announced. Routing main reactor power to neural systems. Atlas's eyes flickered with blue light. Around its massive frame, strips of armor began to glow with the same color. The whole machine hummed with power that made the water around it vibrate. Neural link initiating, the AI announced. Pilot biosigns stable, beginning consciousness merger. In the chamber, Jane gasped. Her body went rigid as Atlas's vast consciousness touched her mind. Information flooded through her thoughts. Combat techniques, weapon systems, flight patterns, and more power than any human was meant to control. Pilot's heart rate elevated. A technician called out, brain activity spiking. Stay with it, Captain. James spoke into the comm. Don't fight it. Let it flow through you. Jane's voice came back, strained but steady. So much knowledge. I can feel everything. The ocean, the facility. I can feel the water pressure on every inch of Atlas's armor. The massive machine's eyes blazed brighter. Its fingers moved, creating currents in the water around them. In the neural chamber, Jane opened her eyes. They glowed with the same blue light as Atlas. Neural link stable, the AI announced. All systems online. Atlas is awake. The war machine moved, raising its arms slowly. Every motion was perfect, fluid, as if it had never been asleep. Through the neural link, Jane felt its strength become her strength, its power become her power. Atlas is ready, she said, her voice overlaid with harmonics from the machine's audio systems. And we hear them coming. The aliens are returning to Mars. James looked at the readouts in awe. Atlas was operating at full power, showing no signs of the problems that had forced humanity to seal it away centuries ago. He grabbed the comm system. Then let's go show them why humanity locked away its guardians, he said. It wasn't because we were weak. It was because we were too strong. The highborn fleet appeared above Mars like a swarm of metal insects. 50 ships, each one bigger than Earth's largest battleships, took up attack positions around the red planet. Their commander, High Admiral Vec, watched the human colony with what passed for a smile on his crystalline face. Begin the next phase of testing, he ordered. This time, increase the radiation intensity by... Sir, his sensor officer interrupted. Something is coming. Something big. The ocean waters near Earth's Pacific region began to churn. A massive whirlpool formed, and from its depths rose a sight that made the alien crew freeze in shock. A giant figure, humanoid in shape, but larger than any human creation they'd ever seen, stepped out of the ocean. Water cascaded off its gray armor as its eyes blazed with blue fire. Atlas had awakened. Behind it, 4 more shapes emerged from the depths. The other Juggernauts took their places beside their leader, each one a different design, but all bearing the same ancient power. Together, they stood taller than mountains, their armor gleaming in the sunlight. Inside Atlas's control chamber, Captain Jane West felt the machine's power flowing through her. Through the neural link, she could sense every weapon system, every energy shield, every bit of the incredible technology that humanity had sealed away centuries ago. Highborn vessels. She broadcast on all frequencies, her voice amplified by Atlas's systems. You attacked a human child. You damaged our colony. Leave now or face the consequences. High Admiral Vec laughed. Impressive machines, humans, but they are just machines. Target their joints. Show them real power. The highborn ships opened fire. Energy beams that could crack planets struck the Juggernauts. But instead of destruction, they found something impossible. The beams simply vanished into the blue shields that flickered to life around each war machine. They chose violence, Jane said to her fellow pilots through their linked communications. Show them why our ancestors sealed us away. Atlas moved first, faster than anything that size should be able to move. It crossed the space between Earth and Mars in seconds, its ancient engines breaking the laws of physics that the highborn thought they understood. As it reached the alien fleet, its right arm transformed into a weapon that made the alien admiral's blood run cold. The plasma cannon fired once. Just once. 3 highborn ships vanished, not destroyed but erased, their very atoms scattered across space. Impossible, Vec shouted. Nothing has that kind of power. Nothing. The other Juggernauts joined the battle. Each one showed abilities that defied the highborn's understanding of science. One created gravity wells that crushed ships like paper. Another phased through solid matter, ripping vessels apart from the inside. A third generated energy fields that turned the aliens' own weapons against them. And Atlas moved through it all like an ancient god of war, each step precise, each attack measured. Jane felt the machine's memories guiding her movements. Countless battles fought across thousands of years, all leading to this moment. Sir, the alien sensor officer whispered, I'm detecting energy readings off the scale. These machines, they're not just weapons. They're what? Vec demanded. They're holding back. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it ended, half the highborn fleet was destroyed. The rest hung dead in space, their mighty engines reduced to scrap by weapons they couldn't understand. Atlas floated before the Admiral's command ship, its blue eyes piercing through the hull to fix on Vec himself. Inside her neural chamber, Jane spoke words that came not just from her, but from the ancient consciousness that had merged with her own. This is your only warning. Humanity locked away its guardians because we chose peace. We chose to grow naturally, to join the galaxy as equals. But we never forgot how to fight. Remember this day. Remember what happened when you hurt one of our children. In orbit around Mars, the mighty highborn fleet fled from 5 ancient machines that had finally awakened from their long sleep. And in a medical bay on Mars, Yum Tom opened his eyes, somehow knowing that everything was going to be okay. The highborn fleet retreated to their nearest base, a massive space station orbiting a gas giant in the Proxima Centauri system. High Admiral Vec paced in his command center, his crystalline form reflecting the dim emergency lights. They are coming, he announced to his gathered officers. The humans will not stop at mere defense. As if summoned by his words, space itself tore open before their station. 5 massive portals, edged with blue energy, appeared from nowhere. Through them stepped the Juggernauts, their armor now bearing the scars of their first battle, but still magnificent in their terrible power. Atlas led the formation, its eyes burning brighter than ever. Inside her neural chamber, Captain Jane West felt the ancient machine's excitement. It had been too long since the Juggernauts had fought together like this, too long since they had fulfilled their true purpose as humanity's guardians. Highborn command. Jane's voice boomed across all frequencies. You have 2 minutes to evacuate your non-combat personnel. Vec snarled. You think we fear you? This station houses our most powerful weapons, our strongest shields. He turned to his weapons officer. Show them our true strength. The space station's surface bristled with energy weapons. Thousands of gun ports opened, revealing technology that had conquered dozens of species. The Highborn had built this station to withstand attacks from entire armadas. But they had never faced anything like the Juggernauts. Atlas raised its hand, and the other 4 war machines moved into formation. Energy began to flow between them, creating geometric patterns in space that made the Highborn sensors scream in confusion. What are they doing? Vec demanded. His science officer stared at the readings in horror. They're linking their power systems. The energy readings, it's like looking at the heart of a star. Inside Atlas, Jane felt the combined power of all 5 Juggernauts flow through the neural link. It was like trying to control an ocean with her mind, but the machine's ancient wisdom guided her, showing her how to channel this impossible force. 2 minutes have passed, she announced. You should have evacuated. The linked Juggernauts moved as one. 5 pairs of hands raised in perfect sync. The space around them bent and twisted as reality itself struggled to contain the energy they were channeling. Fire everything. Vec screamed. Launch all ships. Show these primitives the full might of the Highborn. Thousands of energy beams struck the Juggernaut's combined shield. Hundreds of ships launched from the station's hangars. Vec watched in satisfaction as his entire arsenal was unleashed at once. But when the energy blasts faded, the 5 machines stood unchanged. Their shield hadn't even flickered. Impossible, Vec whispered. No, Jane replied, her voice oddly gentle. Not impossible, just forgotten. Atlas took point position. The other Juggernauts fed their power into it, creating a weapon that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for centuries. Its chest opened, revealing a core of pure energy that hurt to look at. This is why we chose to seal them away, Jane explained as the weapon charged. This kind of power, it should only be used in the greatest need, to protect the innocent, to defend our children. The blast that followed didn't just destroy the station. It erased it from existence, along with a sphere of space 3,000 miles wide. The Highborn ships that had launched were gone, their atoms scattered across the cosmos. Only a small section of the station, the civilian quarters, remained untouched, protected by a precision shield that Atlas had created. As the light faded, Vec stared through his command center's broken windows at the Juggernauts. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. Now you understand, Jane said. We locked away our guardians not because we had to, but because we chose to. Because no species should hold this much power unless they understand the responsibility that comes with it. The Juggernauts turned as one, new portals opening before them. They had made their point. Now it was time for the Highborn to think very carefully about their next move. High Admiral Vec stumbled into the great archive of the Highborn, his crystalline form dulled with exhaustion. The massive library held records going back millions of years, stored in crystal matrices that lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Show me the Guardians, he commanded. Show me everything about Earth. The archive's eye hummed to life, and ancient records began to glow. Images appeared in the air around him, scenes from thousands of years ago. Vec's eyes widened as he watched the truth unfold. There they were, the Juggernauts. Not 5, but thousands of them, standing guard over hundreds of worlds. In the ancient recordings, they looked exactly the same as they did now, titans of metal and energy, protecting the peace of the galaxy. No, he whispered, it cannot be. But it was. The records were clear. Humans hadn't been some primitive species slowly developing on their backwater world. They had been the guardians of peace in the galaxy, the protectors of younger races, the peacekeepers who had stood watch while civilizations grew. On the main viewing screen, a new image appeared. It showed a grand council chamber filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds. At the center stood human leaders, and behind them, the Juggernauts stood silent and watchful. "Access the final records," Vec ordered. "Show me why they left." The scene changed. The same council chamber, but this time, the human representatives were making an announcement that shocked the gathered species. "We choose to step down," the human leader was saying. "We choose to seal away our guardians, to let our civilization start anew. Power such as ours, it should be earned, not inherited. We will sleep, and we will grow again, naturally this time. And perhaps when we rediscover ourselves, we will be wiser." Vec watched as the recordings showed the Juggernauts being sealed away in hidden vaults across Earth. He saw the human civilization voluntarily giving up their role as galactic peacekeepers, choosing to erase their own memories, to start again from the beginning. "Admiral," his communicator chirped, "the humans request your presence. Atlas itself wishes to speak with you." Minutes later, Vec stood in a hastily prepared meeting room on his remaining station. Before him, on a massive view screen, Captain Jane West appeared, the neural links still connecting her to Atlas's ancient systems. "You've seen the records," she said. It wasn't a question. "Why?" Vec asked, his voice trembling. "Why would any species choose to forget such power? To start over as primitives?" "Because power without wisdom is dangerous," Jane replied. "Our ancestors understood this. They chose to let humanity grow naturally, to rediscover our capabilities slowly, to earn our place rather than inherit it." The screen split, showing Dr. James Miller standing in Atlas's maintenance bay. "We sealed away the Juggernauts with the hope that when we found them again, we would be ready for the responsibility they represent. We didn't want to wake them this soon." His face hardened. "But you hurt my son." We didn't know," Vec said quietly. "No, you didn't," Jane agreed. "You saw what you thought was a primitive species and decided to treat us like test subjects. You never asked why a supposedly primitive world had such advanced colonies on Mars. You never wondered why our technology was advancing so rapidly." "The seals were supposed to last another century," James added. "Humanity was meant to have more time to mature. But now that the Juggernauts are awake, we have to deal with the consequences." Vec straightened his crystalline form. "What happens now?" "Now," Jane said, her eyes glowing with the same blue light as Atlas, "you help us prepare the galaxy for the truth. Because humanity isn't just returning to its role as guardians, we're going to do it right this time." Through the window behind Vec, Atlas stood in space, its massive form a reminder of both humanity's power and their choice to use it wisely. The age of pretending to be just another developing species was over. The Guardians had awakened. 1 month after the battle, Tom Miller stood at the window of the rebuilt Mars colony, looking up at the massive figure of Atlas standing guard in the red Martian sky. The Juggernaut's blue eyes glowed softly, a constant reminder that humanity's guardians were watching once again. His father walked up beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. The medical pod had done its work well. Tom had fully recovered from the alien radiation, though he would always have a slight blue glow in his eyes, a mark of his encounter with the Highborn's weapons. "Does it hurt anymore?" James asked, looking at his son carefully. Tom shook his head. "No, Dad, but I can feel them sometimes. The Juggernauts. It's like they're humming in my head." James nodded slowly. The doctors had discovered something unexpected during Tom's recovery. The alien radiation had changed him, creating a faint neural pattern similar to the ones used to control the ancient machines. He wasn't old enough to pilot one. That would have to wait many years, but the connection was there. "Atlas says I might be able to be a pilot someday," Tom said, smiling up at the giant machine. Captain West told me so. Above them, Atlas turned its head slightly, acknowledging the conversation. Since awakening, the Juggernauts had shown more awareness than anyone had expected. They weren't just machines. They were partners, choosing their pilots as much as being chosen. Inside Atlas's control chamber, Captain Jane West smiled at the conversation. She could hear through the neural link. "He's a brave kid," she said to the ancient consciousness that shared her mind. Atlas' agreement came as a warm pulse of energy through their connection. A flash of light in the sky announced the arrival of more visitors. 3 highborn ships appeared, but these came in peace, their weapons powered down. Behind them came ships from 20 other species, all representatives of the newly formed Galactic Council. "The meeting is starting," James said, checking his tablet. "They're going to decide how to handle humanity's return to our old role." Tom watched as smaller ships began landing outside the colony. Aliens of all shapes and sizes emerged, some looking almost human, others completely foreign. All of them stopped to stare up at Atlas with a mixture of awe and respect. "Will there be more fighting?" Tom asked quietly. James shook his head. "No, son. The highborn learned their lesson. And the other species, well, they remember the old stories about the Guardians. They're here to welcome us back." In the colony's main conference room, representatives from across the galaxy gathered. High Admiral Vec, now serving as the Highborn's peace ambassador, stood to address the crowd. "For centuries, humanity guarded the peace of the galaxy," he said, his crystalline form gleaming. "Then they chose to start again, to grow naturally, to earn their wisdom rather than inherit it. I forgot the old stories. We treated them as test subjects rather than the guardians they once were. That mistake will not be repeated." Captain West spoke next, her neural link with Atlas adding harmonics to her voice that made it carry through the room. "We didn't want to wake the Juggernauts so soon. But now that they're awake, we will honor their purpose. Humanity will return to its role as guardians, but with new wisdom, new understanding." From their positions around Mars, Earth, and key points in the solar system, all 5 Juggernauts raised their hands in salute. The gesture sent waves of blue energy rippling through space. Not a threat, but a promise. A promise to protect, to guide, to help maintain peace in the galaxy. Tom pressed his hand against the window, feeling the faint hum of the Juggernauts in his mind. Someday, he would join them as a pilot, helping to protect not just humanity, but all species who needed guardians. "The stories were wrong about one thing," James said, watching the gathered aliens begin their historic meeting. "Our ancestors didn't seal away the Juggernauts because we weren't ready for their power. They did it because they knew that true strength comes from earning your place in the galaxy, not inheriting it." Above Mars, Atlas's eyes glowed brighter, watching over a new era of peace, one built not on fear of humanity's power, but on respect for their wisdom in knowing how to use it.